All right, everybody, welcome back to the series. I know it's been a couple of days, and some of you have been keeping up with me and are waiting on the next one. So here it is. And what I want to do today is I want to go back to the add product form that we were working on last time. And we have kind of working functionality here for our text fields, and we have mostly working functionality for our dropdown. We have a picker for iOS, we have a drop down for Android, but when we select something, nothing sticks. So I want to address that today. I also we created kind of a temporary hard-coded list of strings for these values. I want to extract that out to a Firestore document so that we can populate our values there and read from the database. And the last thing I want to do is just make sure that this Save Product button is not valid unless the entire form is valid. So starting in Firestore, so I'm going to go to my Firestore console, and I've already created the collection, so I'm just going to delete it and recreate it with you. So to replace these values here, I want to start a collection which I'm going to call types. And I'm going to create a units document. And in there, I want an array of strings. And I need to give my field a name. And so I'm just going to call it production. And this way, if we want to have a development version of these strings to test new values, we can do that. And so I'm just going to put single pounds. That restores what we have already. And I'm also just going to add in dozen. So I think we'll need that for things like corn, and also it'll tell us that we're actually reading from the database. All right, so those are all set. Now we need to write a service function to fetch those. So let's visit our services Firestore service. And in here we have our fetch user and our add user. We are going to want to add a new function to get us a stream of type list of string, because that's what we want to pass to that drop-down button. And we'll call that fetch unit types. All right, and to get at this, we want to return our db.collection, and that collection will be types. Then we'll want to dive into the document, which is units. And this is where we have our choice of get for a future or snapshot for a stream, and I am going to take snapshots. And I'm going to come down to the next line, and what I want to do is map, and put in parentheses that snapshot. And from there, we're going to get snapshot.data, which will take us in here. And we can grab the production field now. And so that's going to give us the array of strings. And so we're going to want to map that too. So let's map. We'll specify we're getting string. We will map to type. And we want to cast that type to a string. Again, seems redundant with this here, but when I experimented with this, if I didn't have both in place, it's still stuck to a dynamic. All right, so come outside of the next parentheses, and we're going to want to put to list. And you're not going to get IntelliSense in here because Dart just doesn't understand what we're doing. But once you put to list in there, the error disappears. And so I am going to save that. All right, so if I look at our, let's see, screens, edit product, we have our app drop-down button here, and we've got stream builders around each one of these fields. I'm done with this. And we are going to want a stream builder around the app drop-down button so that we can present the actual unit that's in the back end here. And so we're also, though, going to want a stream for these items. And so one option would be is to have two streams running there. We could have a stream builder, and then we could wrap that stream builder with another stream builder. I think that gets a little bit messy. So one other way to do it would be to stream our unit types through stream provider. And so I think I'll do that so I don't have to wrap two stream builders. Now, if I pull up my dev tools here, so I need to go above the widget, which isn't a big deal, but I might want to have this type available to all the other widgets. I mean, think about when the buyer tries to order, they're going to kind of want to be able to select units as well. So this is a stream that we might want to have readily available throughout the application. And so if I collapse these a little bit, we're an edit product. And you would think we're wrapping widget inside a widget inside a widget, that there would be a ton of places throughout the hierarchy to wrap this. But when you look at these landing, vendor, edit product, they are all basically siblings of each other. And so unless we get above them, we won't be able to access this stream in the vendor or the customer scaffold that we might add later. And so pretty much the only place to go up to is this multi-provider we've already established. And so I'm going to go up to app. So this is in our root. I go up to app. I go up to the very top level. And this is where I'm going to put a stream provider. So we'll do a context, and what are we going to pass in? Well, we want to bring in our function, so let's bring in an instance of Firestore service. And then when we go to pass this in, we're going to pass Firestore service.fetch unit types. Now, my understanding here from the documentation is that when provider goes and looks for a specific type, it goes up the tree and picks the first one that matches that type that it finds. And that means if we are having to wrap up at this top level, like for here, it was asked, question was asked, if we do a Boolean here, true, false, if we put another one in there, how is the provider going to know the difference? And it really won't. And so when you put something like a Boolean here or a list of strings, you are pretty much burning a match for using it at the top level. You're going to have to, if you want to add a second type, create a class and then access it through the class, which is not a big deal. We could do that. Or get creative downstream, or try to wrap it somewhere where it wouldn't necessarily be available to the whole app, but maybe just the portion that you need. So if we're going to put a list of type string here, we should be sure that it really is something we want at the top level. And I've decided that this is something I want available throughout the application. All right, so if we do that, we refresh the tree, we can now see we have a type of list strings here at the very top. So let's go back to our edit product screen, and let's take out this temporary list of items that we have. And that's going to open up an error right there where it has no items. Let's pass in a build context. And come up here and pass it through. And then here, we can set var items equal to provider. Provider.of context. And the type that we're looking for is type list string. All right, we see our error has disappeared, so let's go to our app and let's check and make sure that that worked. So we come in here to unit type, we click on it, and I now see dozen. All right, click on it, nothing happens still, so let's address that. So the value is going to come from the value field, and we are going to want to change that value whenever we pick something in the drop-down or the picker. And so we need to add a few more properties here to our app drop-down button. So let's go to widgets, let's go to drop-down button, and let's slide all the way up to the top, and let's give ourselves a new final string, which will be value, and a new final function, which takes in a string, which will be onChanged. And so we can slide here to the bottom, and we can do this dot value and this dot onChanged. Both will be optional, so we're not going to use the @required decorator. Sliding down here, let's look in iOS first. And what I see is that the text here is our hint text, and it is in the suggestion style, and that's fine if we don't have a value, but if we do have a value, we want the normal body style, and we want that value. So let's say if value is equal to null, then go ahead and present us that suggestion text that we already have. But if not, I'm going to copy this. Then in that case, we want the value. And for our style, we will take body. Did something funky there when I went to copy. All right, this is value, and this is body. All right, I struggled to find a spot to put the microphone that doesn't block my eyesight from the keyboard, and when I can't see the keyboard, I do crazy things. All right, so that's good there. Let's slide down a little bit. Let's go into our material drop down. The first thing I see is we've got null hard coded for the value, so let's actually put that in the value that we pass into the widget. And then we've got an onChange method here, which is blank, which we can now add a fat arrow, and we can give it our onChanged, and we need a string, so we can pass it in the value we're getting from the onChanged method. Okay, sliding down Cupertino, I think we're all set with build material items, all set with build Cupertino items. On our select iOS, we have, looks like we need to update this function here so we can add a fat arrow and we can do our onChanged. And this is giving us an integer, which is the index. I'm actually just going to change the name of that to index so it's clearer. So instead of passing that index, we just want to pass items bracket index. All right, so we're ready to receive those values. So let's visit edit product again. And in our app drop-down button, let's set our value and let's set our onChanged. And so onChanged is going to be equal to product block dot change unit type. And our value we're actually going to get from our stream. So let's wrap our app drop-down button with a stream builder. And so that's going to be of type string. And the stream is going to come from our product block, and it is going to be unit type. And so our value can actually be snapshot.data. And we still need an onChange method, so let's put that down here. Oh no, I'm sorry, we already did that. I like, let's see, down here. I'm going to move it down here. It doesn't matter, but I just kind of like the change methods at the bottom. All right, so let's try that again. I'm going to go into add product. Probably didn't need to leave, but I hit unit type, and I hit pounds, and it sticks. Very nice. All right, so one thing you might notice here in iOS is if you open it up and it lands on a value and you click that, it doesn't register. You actually have to go to another one, back and through there. Don't worry about that for now. That's because it doesn't have a controller. We are going to need to add a controller for this and the text fields when we set this up as an edit product form as well. So we want it to be dual purpose. The edit is going to require some controllers, which is why we made this a stateful class in the first place. So we will address that at that time. Last thing I want to do today is just make sure that this button is not available to be clicked unless we have valid products here. And so to do that, we're going to go back to our product block, and what we'll do is create a stream which will tell us whether all 4 of these streams have valid values. And we don't need to create it up here. We can just create a getter for it. And we're going to create a stream which has a Boolean, and it'll be a getter, and we'll call it isValid. And for this, we're going to use RxDart's combine latest stream, and we are going to combine 4 of them. So we're going to take all 4 of these streams and ask this function to figure out if they're valid. And so we want to give it product name, unit type. I'm going to stretch this out a little bit. Unit price, and available units. All right, and notice these are the public getters that we are passing in, not the private variables. The public getters have the validation. So if we only give the product name 1 character, this one, the public one, has no value. And so this will return false. If we were to give it the private one will have the 1 character. It will have a value because it doesn't have the validator on it. So we want to make sure we're using the public variables there. We can add this here. We could go through here and rename ABCD as something as product name, unit type, if we wanted to, but it doesn't really matter. We just want to say this, and this should all combine to produce a value, and if it does, pass through true, and if it doesn't, don't pass through true. All right, so getting back into our edit product, we can now wrap our button. So make sure we wrap the save product button, not the add image. We can wrap that with a string builder, and that can be a Boolean, and it will be snapshot. Oop, not that. What am I doing? Product block.isValid. And here we want to say if snapshot.data equals true, then go ahead and pass through that nice dark blue button. But if not, our button type is going to be disabled. So if we save that, shrink this up a little bit, I can see the button is disabled. If I add corn and I go and say that should be a dozen, unit price should be $4.50, still disabled. But now if I say I have 10 units, then the product is now valid. I can click this button. I get a error on there because we have no function passed to it. We'll address that in the next video. But when I have no value, I can't click the button and nothing happens. So that's what we wanted to accomplish today. We now have a form. We have the ability to go to our picker and get a valid value from it. If you're on Android, this will be a drop down, and you should be able to do the same thing. And then we can click that button. So next time, we are going to create the product model. And if we look back at our diagram here, we have a few other fields that we want to add other than what's on the screen to the product model. We want to get the vendor ID in there. We want to invent some kind of product ID. Have an image URL, which is optional, and we're not going to worry about that for now, but we want to pre-populate approved, and we want to probably have a note string that is blank, at least for starters. So we have a little bit of work to do other than what's on the form when we create our product, and we will do that next time, and then we will get our first product submitted to Firestore. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you then.